The rain drummed against the coffee shop windows like accusations Marcus couldn't escape. He sat alone at table 12, the same spot he'd occupied every Tuesday for 3 months, watching the door with the desperate hope of a man drowning in his own silence. His 7-year-old daughter Emma's drawing lay crumpled in his jacket pocket to a family of stick figures where one parent had been carefully erased and drawn over so many times the paper had worn thin. Just like his heart, Marcus checked his phone for the 100th time. Still nothing from David, his supposed best friend who had promised to meet him today to talk things through. 3 months since Marcus discovered the truth about his wife's affair. 3 months since David, the man who had been Emma's godfather, had vanished from their lives like smoke. 3 months of Emma asking why Uncle David didn't visit anymore, and Marcus choking on lies that tasted like broken glass. The coffee shop door chimed, and Marcus's head snapped up with pathetic eagerness. But instead of David's familiar broad shoulders, a petite Asian woman in an elegant black coat entered, shaking raindrops from her umbrella. She looked completely out of place in this modest neighborhood café. Copyright A. Everything about her whispered money, from her designer handbag to the way she carried herself with quiet confidence. She scanned the room, her dark eyes settling on Marcus with unmistakable recognition. His stomach clenched. He'd never seen her before in his life. "Marcus Chen?" she asked, approaching his table. Her English was flawless, tinged with the faint accent of someone who had learned multiple languages before most people learn to walk. "Yes," he managed, rising awkwardly. "I'm sorry. Do we? My name is Lee Y. I believe we need to talk about David Morrison and your wife, Sarah." The world tilted. Marcus gripped the back of his chair, his knees threatening to give out. "Who are you?" Lee Y settled into the chair across from him uninvited, placing a leather portfolio on the table between them like evidence in a trial. "I'm someone who understands betrayal intimately, Mr. Chen. And I have something that belongs to you, the truth about what really happened to your marriage." Marcus's throat felt like sandpaper. "I already know the truth. Sarah had an affair with David. They're together now. I'm divorced, and my daughter thinks it's somehow her fault because kids always do." The words came out bitter, rehearsed from too many sleepless nights. "That's only part of the story," Lee Y said gently. "The part they wanted you to believe." She opened the portfolio and withdrew a thick manila envelope. "Mr. Chen, what I'm about to show you will be difficult to process. But you deserve to know that your kindness or your genuine, selfless nature was weaponized against you." Marcus stared at the envelope like it might contain a bomb. "In many ways, it did." "What are you talking about?" "6 months ago, my father, a businessman in Shanghai, was approached by David Morrison about an investment opportunity. David claimed to represent a small tech startup run by his brilliant friend Marcus Chen. He said you were too humble to pitch your own company, so he was doing it on your behalf." The room seemed to spin. Marcus had never started a company. He worked as a software engineer for a mid-size firm, lived in a modest 2-bedroom apartment, drove a 10-year-old Honda. "That's impossible." "I never. My father invested $2 million, Lee Y continued, her voice steady but her eyes filled with a fury that burned cold. "David provided what appeared to be your signatures, your business registration, even fake testimonials about your character and capabilities. He painted you as a genius, too focused on innovation to handle business matters, as someone who would be grateful to have a friend manage the financial aspects." Marcus felt like he was falling through space. "But why would he? Because your reputation preceded you, Mr. Chen. David had been talking about you for years in certain circles, your integrity, your work ethic, how you'd give the shirt off your back to help a friend. He knew that anyone who researched you would find exactly what my father found, a man of unquestionable character who had helped colleagues through difficult times, who volunteered at his daughter's school despite working full-time, who took care of his elderly neighbor's groceries during her hip surgery. Lee Y withdrew a stack of photographs from the envelope. These were taken 4 months ago. David and Sarah, but not having an affair, are celebrating. They're celebrating the successful theft of $2 million using your name and reputation. The photographs landed on the table like physical blows. Sarah and David in an expensive restaurant, toasting with champagne. Sarah wearing jewelry Marcus had never seen before. David holding keys to a luxury car in front of a dealership. They needed you discredited and isolated. Lee Y explained. If you discovered the fraud, you needed to be emotionally destroyed, with no credibility left to defend yourself. What better way than to make you believe your wife had left you for your best friend? You'd be too devastated and humiliated to investigate further. Marcus's hands shook as he examined the photos. But the divorce papers. Sarah said she couldn't live a lie anymore. She couldn't. But the lie wasn't about love you, it was about money. She was supposed to take half your assets in the divorce and disappear with David. Instead, they found something better. They discovered they could use your sterling reputation to commit fraud on an international scale. Lee Y withdrew more documents, bank records, wire transfers, forged contracts. My father became suspicious when the supposed startup never produced any actual products or progress reports. When I investigated, I found the truth. David Morrison has been running this con for 2 years, using the identities of trustworthy friends to steal from wealthy investors. Why are you telling me this? Marcus whispered. Why didn't you just call the police? For the first time, Lee Y's composed mask slipped, revealing raw pain underneath. Because my father isn't just a businessman, Mr. Chen. He survived the Cultural Revolution as a child, built his company from nothing, and taught me that honor and integrity are worth more than wealth. When he realized he'd been fooled, it wasn't the money that broke his heart, it was the betrayal of trust. He became ill with stress and shame. She reached across the table and touched Marcus's hand gently. But more than that, when I researched you the real you, I discovered something beautiful. Every person I spoke to had a story about your kindness. Your neighbor Mrs. Patterson told me how you spent your own money to fix her heat when her landlord ignored her calls. Your daughter's teacher said you volunteer for every field trip, even taking unpaid time off work. Your colleagues described a man who shares his lunch with anyone who forgets theirs, who stays late to help teammates meet deadlines. Tears Marcus didn't know he was capable of anymore began to blur his vision. But what good is any of that? I lost everything that mattered. No, Lee Y said firmly. You lost people who were never worthy of you. But Mr. Chen, there are consequences to this story you need to understand. My father's company has resources, legal, financial, investigative. We've been building a case against David and Sarah for 3 months. But we need your testimony to make it stick. She withdrew one final document from the portfolio. This is a warrant for their arrest, issued yesterday. They're in custody as of this morning. Marcus stared at the warrant, the words swimming on the page. There. Arrested. David Morrison is facing charges for international fraud, identity theft, and money laundering across multiple jurisdictions. Sarah faces charges as his accomplice. The evidence is overwhelming. The coffee shop suddenly felt too small, too warm. Marcus loosened his tie, struggling to breathe. I don't understand. Why me? Why did they choose me? Because you're exactly who you appear to be, Lee Y said softly. In a world full of people pretending to be better than they are, your authenticity made you the perfect mark. David counted on your humility, your trust, your unwillingness to suspect the people you loved. Lee Y opened her purse and withdrew a cashier's check, sliding it across the table. Marcus's eyes widened at the amount of $50,000. This is from my father, she explained. Not as payment. but as an acknowledgement of the damage done to your reputation and your family. There will be more. We're seizing David and Sarah's assets, and the courts have agreed that you're entitled to restitution as a victim of identity theft. Marcus stared at the check, then at Lee. Why? I can't accept this. I didn't do anything to earn it. Mr. Chen, this is exactly why you were chosen as a victim. You can't see your own worth. Lee Y's voice grew passionate. Do you know what my investigation revealed? When David applied for credit cards in your name, every single application was approved instantly. Do you know why? Because your credit score is perfect, not good or perfect. Because you pay every bill early, help friends without keeping score, return extra change when cashiers make mistakes. She leaned forward intently. David researched you for months before the con. He knew you'd given up your savings to help your neighbor avoid foreclosure. He knew you'd taken a second job to pay for Emma's piano lessons when Sarah claimed they couldn't afford it. He knew you volunteered at 3 different charities despite working 50-hour weeks. But that's just normal human decency. No, it's not, Lee Y said firmly. It's exceptional human decency, and it's exactly what convinced my father to trust the investment. When he had you investigated at the real you, every reference sang your praises. Your integrity was the foundation of their entire con. Marcus felt something shifting inside his chest, like a muscle that had been clenched for months finally beginning to relax. So what happens now? Now you have a choice, Lee Y said. You can remain a victim of their betrayal, or you can become something more powerful, a survivor who helps ensure they never hurt anyone else. She withdrew a business card from her purse. My father's company is expanding to North America. We need someone to head our ethical compliance department, as someone whose judgment we can trust implicitly. The salary is 3 times what you're making now, with full benefits and a college fund for Emma. Marcus turned the card over in his hands, the elegant script blurring as his eyes filled with tears again. You're offering me a job after everything that happened? Mr. Chen, we're offering you recognition for who you've always been. David and Sarah saw your kindness as weakness to exploit. We see it as strength to admire and protect. Lee Y gathered her papers back into the portfolio. There's something else. Emma's college fund that you thought Sarah had emptied. She couldn't touch it. It was in Emma's name only, and David never knew it existed. It's been growing with interest for 3 months. The dam finally burst. Marcus put his head in his hands and sighed, not from sadness, but from a relief so profound it felt like resurrection. For 3 months, he'd believed he was a fool who'd been blind to his wife's infidelity and his best friend's betrayal. Instead, he'd been the victim of an elaborate fraud that had used his own goodness against him. Why? He whispered. Why would you help a stranger like this? Lee Y smiled for the first time since she'd sat down. Because my father taught me that when bad people exploit good ones, other good people have an obligation to balance the scales. You were kind to everyone who crossed your path, never knowing that kindness was being documented and used to steal millions. It's only fair that the same kindness should eventually be rewarded. She stood, leaving the check and business card on the table. Take some time to think about the job offer. But Mr. Chen, please understand, you didn't lose your family because you weren't enough. You lost your family because you were too much for people who had chosen to be small. As she moved toward the door, Marcus called out, Lee Y? She turned back. Thank you for seeing me. The real me. Mr. Chen, you were never hard to see. You were just surrounded by people who chose to close their eyes. After she left, Marcus sat alone with the check and business card, feeling like a man who had just discovered he could breathe underwater. Through the coffee shop window, he watched Lee Y climb into a sleek black car, and for the first time in 3 months, he felt something he'd forgotten existed: hope. His phone buzzed with a text from Emma's school. Mr. Chen, Emma drew a beautiful picture of you two together for the art show. She wrote "My dad, my hero" at the bottom. We thought you'd like to know. Marcus smiled through his tears, carefully folding Emma's old drawing of the one with the erased figure and dropping it into the trash. Tonight, he would tell his daughter that sometimes the people who leave make room for better people to arrive. And sometimes, the kindness you give away comes back to you when you need it most. Outside, the rain had stopped, and Marcus could see the sun breaking through the clouds like a promise that winter doesn't last forever.